Hello, everybody. It is Friday afternoon, and I thought I'd do a nice, fun little low key watching of some comments that CJ Stroud had when he was at the Ohio State Pro Day this week, supporting all of his old teammates. And he ran just as many 40s as Marvin Harrison Jr. So he's definitely still, focused and dialed in. For any of you Ohio State people who came here via the algorithm, I'm Seth Payne. I played for the Houston Texans. I cover CJ Stroud now, and I selected the questions that were kind of specific to the Texans themselves. So don't be upset about any of the questions that I left all out. And thank you to Buckeye Huddle who provided this footage. I linked that below if you want to watch the entire interview. But here's CJ. The first question was, when did he feel like he belonged in the NFL?
I probably honestly like OTAs, man. I started making plays, and then we hit training camp, and I started making more plays, and it started becoming slower and slower. And then we played our preseason game and against New England, and everybody thought I was terrible, which is something that I'm not used to. Even playing here, when we played Minnesota that first game, everybody thought I was ass. But proved them wrong, just like I proved the other people wrong from the Patriots game. So, it's just when you're young, you make mistakes. That's just kind of comes with the territory. And honestly, like coming to the league, you have to understand that those guys make plays too. Sometimes you might throw a perfect pass, but it just gets intercepted because those guys are just as good as you are. So for me, the way I try to separate myself was just film study and being myself. Everything that got me to the point where I was at, I just kept doing and just kept going, never looked back.
I I forgot. It is weird that I forgot it. I guess I just haven't relived it in a while. Just how miserable all of OTAs and training camp was, with people gushing over the fact that, Bryce Young was named the starter for no reason at all, but he was named the starter, so he's ahead of CJ Stroud. Wow, Anthony Richardson was named the starter. They're so far ahead of CJ Stroud. Oh, CJ Stroud threw an interception in a preseason game. He's the worst quarterback who ever lived. The thing that was impressive to me at the time and remains impressive now, because including on into the regular season when he was playing with 4 backup offensive linemen to start the season, he never showed a bit of frustration. I mean, there were times where he looked a little bit lost. There were times that he looked a little bit flustered, but I didn't think he ever showed any frustration at all. I think it was a pretty good hint of what was to come and his ability to handle adversity and all of that. Next question was, what's the difference between performing and winning? I couldn't quite understand what this question was, but it was something about there's a difference between performing and winning.
What did it mean to not just perform, but to win?
To win, man, it's hard in the league, man. Every game counts. Man, a lot of games come down to the fourth quarter, and it's really like some fans get mad at me because I take a check down or I throw it out of bounds. But you have to play field position. Like, field position is super important in the NFL because you're not going to score every drive. It's just not possible. So, just playing that game in between the game is very smart to get those wins.
I think the big part of the game between the game and not scoring on every drive. Like, this is a kid that averaged 8 yards per attempt almost and was very aggressive downfield, extremely aggressive downfield, and yet threw so few interceptions. And, the old stat, what was the Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and CJ Stroud were the only guys to have led the league in pass yards per game, but also been had fewer than however many interceptions. The lowest interception rate too. Like, it was a level of maturity and understanding all the old cliches about take what the defense gives you, don't go broke taking a profit. The only time we really saw him stray from that in the fourth quarter was the Bengals game. We can blame Bobby Slowick all we want for the play call, but ultimately, CJ pulled the trigger on what was an interception late in the game. Luckily, they were able to still win that game. But there were so few rookie wrinkles between both CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. That was maybe the most pleasant surprise, was that even when quarterbacks or coaches are good as rookies, they tend to make a lot of rookie mistakes, and we really didn't see that a lot from these guys. Next question, the interview. You can hear the interviewer on this one.
That Rutgers game was that moment for you here where people got to see what you were really about here. Was there a game like that in the NFL for you last year?
I would say like the Colts Jaguars game, like week 2, week 3. I feel like I played good against the Colts. And then going to week 3 against the Jags, I had a really good game with my teammates. We had a complete 3-phase football game with special teams, defense, and offense all fitting together. And, and it was special, man. And after that, we were like, look at each other in the locker room, and we beat the Steelers. I think we ended up we lost to Atlanta, and then we came back and beat the Saints, and we were 3-3 at bye. And then just kept rolling from there, So that was about the point where I was like, okay, like starting to slow down for me.
I think that it was the Jaguars game, I believe, where he said that was the last game where they treated him like a rookie. I think, and probably, you think about some of the big plays in that game where I think CJ thought, oh, okay, you're going to be like overly aggressive, or you're going to try to test me, you're going to try to fool me, then go ahead. I'll hit Tank Dell multiple times in that game. And I think that did kind of send a message to the league. Okay, you gotta really be on your P's and Q's with this rookie. He doesn't play like a rookie. The one story that I heard early in the season that I loved was Bucky Brooks from NFL Network. He does the color commentary for the Jaguars games. And he said in talking to those Jaguars coaches before the game, they'd only seen 2 games of CJ so far. And they said, like, this kid's the real deal, man. Like, we just, obviously they didn't exactly game plan for him quite like that, but they said he was just so far ahead of the curve in what he was doing. That was cool to see. The Colts game too. The Colts game, he came back and was they were down so big immediately. I apologize for losing all powers of language there for a second. They were down so quickly, so immediately, that I think a lot of people noticed that he played well, and yet at the same time, it was in either garbage time or come from behind time, so it didn't feel like it counted as much. But yeah, it was good. Next question. He talked about the dynamic. I'm not sure what the question was, but he talked about the dynamic of competing with his friends at quarterback at Ohio State.
One thing that me and Jack and Quinn and Kyle, we all had really good relationships off the field. And we all really wanted to see each other do well. It wasn't like, of course, like everybody wanted to play and everybody wanted to start, but like it wasn't out of ill will, It wasn't like we were trying to like cut each other in line or just be weird, It was really, everything was natural. And I think that's the reason why, we've all had some successes, you know what I'm saying? And I think for those guys, like just doing it for the right reasons, and just, listening to the coaching. And it's not going to be easy, like one point in your career at Ohio State, people are going to hate you and they're going to talk crazy, but it's all to prepare you for what's to come next. You got to be able to.
I think, honestly, that's one of those things that would look worse on transcript if you can't see the way he presents it. And because CJ is a very realistic expectation of human beings, and that's not pessimistic. It's just he very, very much understands that human beings can be capricious. They can not always be so loyal, and it's not an indictment against any one individuals or anything. He's seen this before. He's talked about it when his dad was arrested, and they'd been in the church, and his dad was a pastor, and they spent every weekend on outreach and everything. His dad got arrested, and none of those people were there for him. And when he tells that story, at least when he did on the pivot, he doesn't say it with any kind of animosity or he doesn't sound scorned or anything. He just, I think he learned very early on the nature of the reality of human nature. So, which you could be negative about if you wanted to. I think he just kind of takes it as it comes. Everybody's going to hate you at some point. So don't read too much into the love that you get from the media, because you're going to get the hate too. As far as the camaraderie amongst quarterbacks, yeah, it's pretty rare that a quarterback is going to act like a complete D-bag to other quarterbacks that he's competing with. That's why it was when Baker Mayfield said, or excuse me, when Johnny Manziel said that Brian Hoyer was mean to him in the Cleveland quarterback meeting room, I was skeptical of that. Like Johnny at the time was admitting to just being completely out of control with all of his substance issues, and somehow it was like Brian Hoyer's fault that people were impatient with it. Like, I don't know. Everybody's usually pretty cool. I had a couple friends once. It wasn't in the NFL, but they were competing quarterbacks, and they took it the wrong direction, which was they were competing, but they would treat it as if, like, if one guy missed a workout, they were best friends, the other guy would miss a workout too. And we were kind of pissed about that. Like as a team, like, all right, we appreciate that you guys are good buddies and everything, but you're kind of screwing us all over. But could you please take this competition a little more seriously? All right. How does he perform so well in clutch moments?
I mean, you got to be able to, slow the game down. I think that comes from his preparation. Coach Day was really hard on me early on about prepping the right way. He taught me how to prepare like a pro, and I use those skills that I learned with him now. And when those, like, clutch moments happen or things like that, like, honestly, those are probably, like, my most calm moments just because I know I put the work in. The worst thing that can happen is we just don't win. And, of course, that sucks, but it's like you got to be able to learn from that. So, I don't think every L, I always say this, every L isn't a loss until you learn from it, So a lot of those moments, man, it's like, man, if I throw a pick here, okay. If I throw a touchdown, I'm the hero. So you're the hero of the zero, For me, I'm okay with living with that because that's what I signed up for. Just like
that right there, that's a tough one, I know, for fans sometimes because, and as I've always said, I like my quarterbacks to lack perspective on life, which I'm joking kind of with that, but I don't like it when guys go out of their way to insist that football doesn't define them, because while that is true and should be true, it's still a pretty big part of your core identity if you're obsessed with it. Like there's nothing wrong with being obsessed with something, and if that object of your obsession tends to be football, there's nothing to be ashamed of in saying that that's a part of your identity. You don't have to be known as a philosopher or anything else. It's okay to be a football player, and I think CJ very much understands that. But like also understanding how to take losses in stride and how to learn from them. That's very much in stride with what DeMeco does. Like I always had coaches that would say, "Hey, by the loss is Sunday, by Monday at noon, you got to be moved past it and beyond." And I would say like 90% of those coaches didn't practice what they preached, because you sure as hell would be getting yelled at on Wednesday and Thursday about what happened on Sunday. Sometimes you'd be getting yelled at on like Saturday morning about what happened the previous Sunday. But come that next Monday, hey, flush it. We're out of here. Flush it. We're good to go. I feel like CJ and DeMeco, nobody's ever going to accuse them of not caring, but they also know that you got to move on. That was one of the best lessons somebody told me once, was that it's actually mentally weak to be too tough on yourself after a loss, because and I needed to hear that, because if you're just downright depressed and beating yourself up or beating teammates up on a Monday, then you're not getting ready for the next week's game already. So like at some point you got to quit whining and bitching about stuff and just move on. Just one way CJ's more mature than me as a 49-year-old. What's one way that OSU prepared him for the NFL that perhaps he didn't expect?
the coverage, the media coverage, the you guys of the world. You guys were amazing. I mean, of course, you guys did piss me off at times. I'm just kidding. But no, yeah, 100%. You guys are critics, and NFL. Everybody knows how to be an NFL quarterback nowadays, and everybody knows how to be CJ and everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I got a lot of that here. And, early on, I didn't know how to handle it, to be honest. And it was hard for me. But, I had a lot of great mentorship, like my agent David, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, a lot of OGs in the game, Cam Newton, like that I seen do media and things like that, that helped me a lot. And just being myself, like I can sit up here and crack jokes with y'all and just being myself, Early on, you would try to, like, answer everything the right way or do it like, man, whatever you're doing, like, I just try to be myself. So that's something that definitely prepared me from Ohio State to the NFL.
All right, let me start in reverse on that and talking about him being himself. Like, so much of that is also just a reflection on DeMeco, because I like when Bill O'Brien was here, it's not like guys were comfortable being themselves. Do you remember the first year? Everybody was just trying like hell to be the best teammate they could be. That was the answer for like 3 straight weeks. I'm just trying to be the best teammate I can be. And it's like CJ too. When I remember watching him at Ohio State and wondering, like, okay, is he nervous? Like, what's his deal? When you're in college, especially, or if you have a domineering coach, but I think it wasn't Ryan Day, it was more just his situation at Ohio State with CJ. It can be overwhelming, like the pressure you feel to represent the university well and to look like a fine, upstanding young man and everything. And CJ is a guy who takes things very seriously. And I don't think we never really saw as much personality out of Mid-Ohio State as he does now. And I know people from OSU will say, yeah, like he showed more personality than you saw in a lot of clips, but we saw him loosen up even over the course of the season in Houston. I forgot to mention Ryan Day earlier when he brought up the leadership side of things, because like Ohio State and like CJ being at the OSU Pro Day, this is obviously really good for QB recruiting and Ryan Day recruiting. And I think it's very apparent now. People are starting to get that, all right, that offense actually prepared CJ Stroud pretty damn well for the NFL, that he did have to do a lot of more complicated things that other guys don't do, and that this myth of somehow Columbus, Ohio being a place that sucks the life out of quarterbacks and makes them unfit for the NFL was just cockamamie. So I think that I'm guessing that's going to help out recruiting down the line. But also the leadership part of it. I think Ryan Day did a really good job of just genuinely sitting down and working on leadership with CJ Stroud. And CJ's talked about it. Ryan Day has talked about it. It's one of these things that I can remember as a player being frustrated that sometimes people talk a lot about leadership, but don't actually teach the methods and the tools of leadership. Where in the military, when they train people to be leaders, what do? They have them lead, like genuinely lead, go out and lead a mission, go out and lead an exercise. You have to make decisions. Like that's how you learn how to lead. You lead. In football, a lot of times coaches will ask for demand leadership, but they don't really know what they're asking for. Like they want guys to give a nice speech, or they want guys to, yell at a younger guy if they don't have their crap together. With CJ, it feels very much more like Ryan Day worked on a systematic way to be a leader. Talking to him about body language, talking to him about CJ the day after the team was done, after the exit physicals, CJ came in. He said it was really important for him to be there and for everybody to see him being positive and being around the building and everything. Like he gets that part of it, that people are constantly looking at him and they're going to take their cues from him. And that's something like a lot of young quarterbacks just haven't had to deal with. The other part of that too is to go back to Ohio State. I think sometimes people think, and I understand this, people thought that maybe CJ had it too easy because he had such a good offensive line and he had such great wide receivers. And I get that. That's understandable because you don't get to see the guy under as much adversity, so it's harder to project just how he'll be. But in terms of the adversity of facing scrutiny, the pressure of big games, like just the Michigan rivalry alone, there's hardly ever anything quite like that in the NFL. The emotions just aren't as big. It's not as all-encompassing and all-consuming. So I think his experience at Ohio State prepared him for the pressure of being an NFL quarterback just about as well as anybody could. And it's, if he had won 2 straight national championships and they never faced any real adversity, then I might worry a little bit about it. But at the same time, he's faced the adversity and the scrutiny and the blame game and all that. Last question was, and then I'll take some questions from you guys. The interviewer asks the question here.
How ready did you feel for the NFL from that standpoint?
One moment that kind of sticks out for me, I was in the combine. I don't know if I ever told this before, but Andy Reid pulled me to the side, and that was like the moment I was like, okay, because he was like telling me like, man, you'll be just fine. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, you can tell. He told me that he could tell that I prepared the right way, just how I played the game my last year here at Ohio State. And so like that gave me a lot of confidence and like that I was doing the right things preparation wise. And
so like obviously good to get a vote of confidence from Andy Reid. It's interesting because CJ Stroud was way more prepared for the NFL in terms of reading defenses, understanding concepts than Pat Mahomes was. Pat Mahomes comes out of the air raid and was pretty like he had a pretty rudimentary understanding of football in general. Obviously he had skills. But that year that he could sit and watch and learn from Andy Reid was very, very big. I'm sure he would have been fine regardless, but there was just a lot more to process for Pat Mahomes. He was coming from a different place. As Gennaro said, could be wrong, but do college teams change their schemes for some players coming in? Doubt it, right? Stroud is special. Yeah, I don't know if you're like, I wasn't arguing that Stroud's not special. As far as the scheme goes, though, that you do as much as the quarterback can handle. So every scheme everywhere, at least on good teams, changes based on who the quarterback is. Kyle Shanahan really on the Play Callers podcast this summer, he talked about it at length, and it was really interesting because he was talking about how, every single year, okay, you might have a guy that, is absolutely brilliant at reading the snaps, reading things before the snap, but then falls apart after the snap. You might have a guy that's awesome at reading coverages and understanding what's going on, but can't adjust to the defense not playing the coverage properly. Like all these different wrinkles that you've got to tailor your offense to. So with CJ, yeah, they're able to do some things with him that they couldn't do with Cardale or Justin Fields or vice versa. So there's that. As far as the whole, and the life of Colby keeps getting hit by ads. I apologize, Colby. Yeah, what if you went to a different school? The question there is like Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow went to Ohio State and then transfers to LSU, and somehow he managed to make it in the NFL. There's nothing about it's an absurd concept that somehow going to a specific school means that you can't play quarterback. The other thing that's absurd though too is that Ohio State has this reputation of like churning out busts, when in fact they've had very few guys picked in the top 10. It's just that there are a lot of really good college quarterback, really good players that come out of there that are either Heisman candidates or hugely touted, but they don't go in the first round. People just think of them as disappointments in the NFL because they were huge names in college, and then they don't do anything in the NFL, but they're not first round busts. I digress. I got so frustrated with that for so long. I get so frustrated with it because there's no quarterback factory. Most schools over the course of decades upon decades might put out one genuinely awesome quarterback into the NFL. So there's just this myth of a QB factory school or something. It just doesn't exist. Let's see. Right. Oh yeah, you guys are talking about the Joe Burrow. Yeah. QB that won a national championship and Heisman winners don't do well in the NFL. He did. He credited Deshaun Watson, which that's one thing I think when he did that at the combine, somebody might have talked to him because we didn't hear a lot. I don't remember hearing him credit Deshaun Watson or mention him much after that, or at least after he was drafted by Houston. But then now, like as he said, he's getting a little looser and he's not worried about it. So we'll see. I'm not all broken up about it or anything. Nico Collins' stats starting to look like Demaryius Thomas's career stats. Quite the first couple of years, then got a QB and went off. Yep, yeah. Let's see. CJ is a perfect example of how important it is for young QBs to land in the right team situation to be successful. Yeah, that's the scary thing about. Look, that's what Caleb's dealing with right now, right? Like Chicago has to make moves, and they have made moves like bringing in Keenan Allen just to try to. It's like they have to recruit the first round, the number 1 overall pick, to be sure that he absolutely wants to come there, because it's a scary thing. They've got an open air stadium on a ridiculously frigid and windy lake, and it's hard to play like that. It's one thing about Cleveland, right on the lake, open air. Supposedly that's going to change. Chicago, right on the lake, open air. Whereas other cold water places like either Green Bay or Buffalo is quite a few miles inland from the lake, so they get weather and they get snow, but like the incredibly nasty stuff that you get right on the water, they don't get as much of. And like that's where the elements it's hard to be a quarterback in Chicago, man. It's got a little something to do with being I'm not going to say anything snarky. I was going to do a Tavondre Sweat video today, but I didn't end up finishing up all the cutting up. And I've got some reasons to be super excited about Tavondre Sweat and it being a potential Texans target. But I've also got reasons to be nervous. So I'm going to do that sometime this weekend. I also did a Shohei Ohtani timeline because I got so confused that for my own sake, I did a timeline of Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter and when all of the alleged events occurred and how the story changed. If you want to check that out, my hot baseball content as we near the regular season for the Astros. I'm Seth Payne, played for the Texans back in the day, 10 years in the NFL. This is my YouTube channel. I do Sports Radio 610 on mornings in Houston. Please like, subscribe, tell a friend. Thank you.